UVify recently set Guinness World Record for the most multi-rotors flown simultaneously. Can you let us know what this achievement means for your company and the whole drone industry as a whole?
Absolutely. So what we really, the point of that was to show the world, with the proof that the Guinness World Record adjudicator brings, of what we are capable of in terms of scale and precision. We also sought to demonstrate really this kind of next generation content delivery system, which is something I've coined this, I've named this technology. It's not a drone show. It's next generation content delivery. And this is why you see so many brands using our technology. I mean, all around the world. It's just amazing.
Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we delve into the ever changing and accelerating pace of global change and its impact on our lives. I'm your host, John Paul Flores, broadcasting live from the New World Studio. Today, we're diving into the world of AI and automation. As an enthusiast and expert in lead generation, I will guide you through understanding and leveraging these technologies for your business and for your personal use. And don't forget, AI and automation might be unstoppable forces, but that doesn't mean you are powerless. Tune in to learn how to make them work for you and not the other way around. But first, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we navigate the changing world around us. I'm your host, John Paul Flores, specializing in lead generation and AI automation, here to help you understand how our world is changing and what it means for you. In today's episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with Robert Cheek, the Chief Operating Officer at UVify Inc., and the leading figure in the fields of robotics and artificial intelligence. Robert brings a unique perspective, viewing technology as an art form from where composition, timing, and emotional impact are crucial. We'll dive into his insights and how this artistic approach influences technological innovation and discuss the latest advancements in robotics and AI and drone technology. Get ready to explore how these groundbreaking technologies are shaping the future of autonomous systems and drones. Robert, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, John Paul. It's a pleasure to be here.
By the way, before we begin on the in-depth questions, can you give us a quick intro on who Robert Chick is? What's your expertise, your experiences, and what keeps you busy these days?
Hmm. So my name is Robert Sheik, also known in some circles as Rob the Robot Guy. Um, I've been working with the robotics, mobile robots, aerial robotics, or drones, and everything related to that, whether in field of autonomous systems, sensor technologies, self-driving cars, or AVs. Uh, I've been with UVify for about 9 years now, so almost since the beginning. Prior to my tour at UVify, I was the robotics analyst with Hyundai Motors. So one of my roles there was to identify companies to either invest in or to partner with. So, for example, would be like the Boston Dynamics acquisition, which took place just prior to my moving over to UVify. Prior to that, I worked with a company where I was the director of innovation lab called Eugene Robotics. We were one of the first companies to commercialize what's known today as AMRs, autonomous mobile robots, which you see pretty much operating in factories everywhere. There were a handful of companies doing this. Um, Actually, it was like 10, 12 years ago now. But now many of those companies have been acquired by bigger companies, and yeah, the rest is history.
Since your job is to research companies to invest in, correct me if I'm wrong. What made you want to work with UVify? What makes it so that you knew from day one that this thing is gonna be great.
Right. So, in part of my role was to when an interesting company would pop up on my radar, whether through notification about an investment in a company, or I would just track companies and had some meetings with the CEO. And after a few meetings, we just decided I would find a way to contribute value and to help the company grow, help it get it commercial direction. I think one of my core areas is being able to understand where technologies, where robotics technologies, where they are, and what we can do with those technologies, how we can take that technology and commercially deploy it in a realistic, profitable manner. And I think that's where my interest in the company started, and it's always been kind of my role in robotics is, well, we have this technology, we know how to do all this stuff. What's a use case for it? And so I think that's where I decided, okay, well, we have all this great technology. Where are we going to? How are we going to commercialize it? And what kind of businesses can we create with this? Unfortunately, in robotics, there's many companies that are pretty much funded by, let's just say, government research grants. But they're developing technologies, but they haven't even go clue where to utilize those technologies in practical manner that the market needs or wants. And I guess that's a history of technology, isn't it?
And you've described technology as an art form. Can you explain to us why do you think that is?
Yes. I mean, it's like anything else, any medium that you work with, whether in acting, theater, you would call that speaking, but can you take that technique and can you persuade, can you bring about an emotional change in people can you affect change and persuade them, whether it's painting, whether it's drawing, all of these are mediums that we use to express ourselves in some way. In my view, very much with business, with technology, and with robotics, is that it is an art form. I believe that most endeavors that require uh, intellectual, so it's a bit late where I am, um, endeavor is in fact a creative act, and therefore, by definition, is an art form because you have to paint the idea of what these colors, what these technologies, what can they do, and then you have to be able to synthesize and put those elements together in a way that moves people, whether commercially to deploy those systems in some use case or to persuade them, whether through advertising or in any number of different use cases. And so by definition, like, or like a symphony, there's many components that you need to put together, baking a cake to have an end result. And that end result is the art that you are creating.
Just because of what you said, I think about, a lot of people have different ideas, but I think it mainly goes into how well you executed it. Just like when you're an artist, a lot of artists have a lot of great idea on what a good painting is, but only a few of them can execute to the point that people will be amazed because of perfection.
Hmm. I agree, John. Yeah, absolutely.
And UVify recently set Guinness World Record for the most multi-rotors flown simultaneously. Can you let us know what this achievement means for your company and the whole drone industry as a whole?
Absolutely. So what we really, well, the point of that was to show the world, with obviously with the proof that the Guinness World Record adjudicator brings, of what we are capable of in terms of scale and precision. We also sought to demonstrate really this kind of next generation content delivery system, which is something I've coined this, I've named this technology. It's not a drone show. It's next generation content delivery. And this is why you see so many brands using our technology. I mean, all around the world. It's just amazing. And this year it's really spot on a hockey stick, kind of growth. So if you look at that, if you look at some of those videos that were shot of that, you'll see basically like a three-dimensional EFO in the sky, and there's some camera drones flying around it. So, and it's got rotors going. The other thing you see in there's our corporate logo in the sky, which is like their little thing, but what looks like a massive screen, which you can see for you know miles and miles and miles and miles. And you can see it from the sky. You can probably see it from space too, but I haven't checked. So we're really demonstrating, putting into the minds of, to people, like, this is where this is going and this is where we're taking this. And we're doing it today. It's no longer something that, can it be done? We are doing it.
As a content delivery system, your method, or drones as a whole, is so new and unique to the eyes of anyone who sees it that you basically have no choice but to be amazed and mesmerized and look for it for minutes.
I'm inclined to agree, John Paul. I
Yeah.
think, when I was working with autonomous mobile robots, one of the ideas, and what that I had developed was an advertising platform using mobile robots, smart mobile robots. Let's say on a subway station platform, we have big screens everywhere, but nobody's paying attention to that. Nobody's paying attention to phone ads or any of that stuff. We've learned to switch that off. And the human eye has been tuned through evolution to track motion. We can't avoid it. So it was just, and that's why when we see something, we automatically look. It's part of it's how we were built. Now, what does that mean for a medium like next generation content delivery? No matter how many times you've seen these productions, not the same, no matter, and I've seen many, you're still going to look no matter what. Why? Moving, it's colorful, up there. You're going to look no matter what, even if for a half second. And if you look for a half second, that means our goal, the goal of a marketing company, has been achieved, because we now live in an attention economy where, billions are spent trying to get your attention. And most of us have learned, to switch off or to skip and things like this. More importantly, most likely you're going to share that. You're going to take a picture of that, and hence it adds to the virality of that message, which further amplifies the value of that content. And I believe it really boils down to the humanity. There's some core traits that, no matter your culture, no matter your ethnicity, we all share the same thing as human beings. We all have a shared need to have communion. And I don't necessarily mean that in a religious sense, but this is why we go to the theater. This is why we go to sporting events. This is why we go to mass or whatever your religion. Humans have an inherent need to share experiences, to share ideas, and to share them in real time. And you can't do that with a just purely digital medium. The cyber-physical medium is the most efficient way of helping people to realize that need to share experiences. And ultimately, this technology will get people to share these. They'll together, they go on site, and they also share online.
As an advertising platform, I think this what you created would be genuinely effective for a very, very long time, just because of the fact that not everyone can just put up those drones up there.
That's correct. So there are more and more companies that are coming in the space, but what you'll see, John Paul, is most of these companies are really doing, I mean, it's not to be disparaging, but like we like to joke, like, ooh, that's very 2015. You know, like, at it's like we have ultra high definition, and some of these companies are coming in with black and white, if you would, or like the flip paper doing animations, and that's just not going to cut it because it's simply not interesting anymore in more competitive markets. However, because we are still in the nascent stages of this, not for the big brands, um, there's still an element to the market which that there's still the ooh ah from that kind of stuff. However, that's changing, and will continue to change at a very, very fast rate because we can deliver 100x times the quality and the story. And because we are the biggest company, because we have the best technology, we're able to do that at an incredible price.
And what makes UVify the top of its game?
Good question. We work harder. We're more driven. I like to say we're relentless. And I think I mentioned we were chatting. Um, you know, we have the world record for the largest swarm, and our platform, the EFO, has more world records that have been executed with that than every other platform in the world combined. Nothing even comes close. And so I said, don't believe anything I'm telling you. Your viewers, just have a look at the videos, zoom in. You'll see which drone, which platform is going to use. You'll see this little guy right here. That's almost all of them. And so going back to what makes us top of our game. So I think first mover advantage was one. So because we actually invented the space, we understand it more than I think anyone. I think second, many of these companies that are coming online now are really, I would say, like hobbyists or like kind of RC types, which is great. Our team consists of people from the top of the game in design, top of their game in business, top of the game in marketing, PhDs in aeronautical engineering, computer vision. So we're a little different than some of the other companies. Most of the other companies are just, yeah, again, they're like people that were under radio control, or maybe they think they can build a drone or whatever, and they tend to only operate in either running drone shows. I say that again, um, where even though we are number one in that space, that's not our only business. So that's I think a huge difference between what we do and what others do. Like that's their only business, and they're still not very good at it.
What's the current flight time of one of your drones?
I think engineering flight time is like in 22 minutes, 23 minutes, but the show time it usually ranges 15, 17 minutes. We're very cautious about putting that on our webpage or any printed materials. And there's a reason for that, because that always depends on a variety of factors like the design, um, how is the platform moving, the intensity of the lights, the operating conditions. So there's a wide range of factors. What I can say though, John, is that our platform, while we launched it in 2019, we call that Gen 1. What you're seeing flying today, especially by the bigger show companies, uh, is a completely different aircraft. Um, for example, we launched what we call an extended flight battery, because we saw there were some companies saying, "Oh, well, we have the longest flight time." Like, done. We've got a new battery. So, we have the brightest. Done. We have an upgraded LED. These claims that many of these companies are making online, which again, nice website, interesting stuff, that you write up. But where are your shows? We're doing this in scale. It's very important. I think, like the airline industry. So we do have partners that come out of the airline industry, and they started this business because they see it as a next generation marketing tool. They very much have their idea is, if the aircraft is not in the air, we're not making money. Now, this is the strongest. I would say it's a workhorse. These things are flying all the time. Some major theme parks every day, twice a day. Um, July 4th in the United States, I think we ran with our partners 40 productions across the U.S. total. And there were a couple of other smaller companies. They ran one and failed. So, and where we had 40, every single one of them was successful. And so I think that the robustness of our platform lends to our also lends to our success. We build these things to inform and to do it safely.
So basically, you have the most reliable and at the same time one of the most innovative drones out in the market currently.
Absolutely. So we built it to be modular, and that's
Yeah.
why, there are companies that have been with us since the beginning. And what we'll do is we'll have a module that we develop. For example, the Pyro module, which you saw at the dev post. So we partnered with a company, we built a module that just plugs in, and that's option. We never impose these kind of technology shifts on our partners. I'll give you an example. On one particular company, they've been with us almost since the beginning. They've recently doubled their fleet size. And I mentioned to their CEO, I said, look, the shipment you're going to get are what we internally call Gen 2, which means it's got this upgrade built in, but it's backwards compatible with your existing fleet. So don't worry about it. Now, this particular partner in his market, in his territory, and he does service things like major hotel chains, but the particular market he's in, he said, look, we in our market, maybe it's not like New York or LA, it's not cutthroat, you got to have every little edge on the competition. So for him and his company, the number of EFO drones is what helps him sell. Like, oh, we have 400 versus, we've got 24-bit, 24 frames per second and quad constellation precision. And he said that doesn't matter. We'll do those upgrades later. We just need more. And I think that also contributes to our success. Where you see some other companies, they literally end of line a product, and there's several of them. Most of them do this. They'll just end of line something, and oh, here's the new one. Why? Because they don't know what they're doing.
The fact that your Gen 2 version is compatible with your Gen 1 version just makes it so great in terms of scaling with your partners because they can still use their old fleet with the new one. No, I think that's what makes it great.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, it's also better for the environment because we keep the same platform going. I like to use a metaphor of like the Boeing 747, which is a great aircraft. Let's not talk about Boeing today. That's another conversation. But the 747, which was launched in 1969. However, there's still there are continually being built, Air Force One, for the U.S. president. Now, that aircraft, and I think when they retired it from service, and the regular 747 is like Series 8, maybe. That was maybe 5-10 years ago they retired that. But that aircraft and Air Force One are completely different from the 747 that launched in 69. They look almost the same. It's the same platform, great platform, but the technology inside is completely different. It's yeah, the backwards compatible.
Some drone companies focus so much on one particular feature, maybe making it so that they have the longest flight time, the brightest light, the best design, to the point that the drone as a whole is not that great.
Hmm. I think we actually we outclass every other platform on the
Yeah,
market and all of those, every single one of those.
really.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that's
there's
great.
and I think there's some operators that there's unfortunately there's some false advertising going on because it's very much for some of these companies there it's still very much kind of a cowboy kind of environment. So they think it's the Wild West. But as this evolves, as it becomes an industry, um, we expect, and our partners expect, there needs to be truth in advertising. Um, and again, you can just look at the performances that are done with our platform, through our partners or through what we do, and you look at what the others are doing. It's clear, without having to say, we do this kind of thing. Just see, believe.
By the way, can you explain more about your see believe methodology? Why do you think that everything that you want to believe you should see first?
Good question, John Paul. Um, so I don't necessarily, when it comes to life, obviously there are things like we do on faith, right? We do many things on faith. Um, but when it comes to business, when it comes to a business which is all about visibility, which is all about design, which is all about execution, it's about robustness. It's about, let's see, what's it? It's reliability, repeatability. Well, there are many companies that are like, oh yeah, we've got the best LEDs and we do this and we do that, blah, blah, blah. Great. Show us how many companies how many brands, how often is it flowing? This platform has more hours than every other platform in the world combined, hours flown. So when it comes to this business, it's a visual business. So, other companies, they talk a big game. Many, and I've seen some of them recently, they just literally have renders on their website. Oh, nice render. You know, so again, but they talk, they'll talk a big game. Like, just look. So see, believe.
I went to your website, and the way it looks, it's very simple and just straightforward. No marketing flux at all.
We're updating our
Yeah,
website. We're just so busy
yeah,
growing that yeah, that's just sometimes been overlooked. Actually, I'm reviewing things for the updated website now. But yeah, and
yeah.
some
But some companies focus so much on how good their website looks like that their product is not that great.
yeah, I can think of couple of them right off the top
Yeah,
of my head. I'm not going to mention that. One of them, like, that's a great website. Um, I can mention that there was a show in Texas for July 4th where there was fires and they were flying into commercial airspace, and I'm not saying any names, but great website. And they're doing their best to like hide who it was, but obviously we know.
I'm gonna research that.
Please do.
By the way, do you hope that you have other use cases in the future besides entertainments and events?
Absolutely. So we're already looking at use cases. Um, there are many being developed. So I'll give you an example, John Paul. Like, think about think about things like regardless of your political um, views, but let's say on like the U.S. Mexican border, or let's say the coastline near the European Union, you have people that are human beings that are lost at sea. They need fresh water. And again, regardless of political views and whatever, um, there's still a humanitarian need. Now, if you can put up something where cell phone signals, mobile signals aren't working, and you put up this clean water, 50 kilometers that way, or go that way, there's safety. That's a tremendously valuable use case for this technology. If you can, many parts of the world you don't have self coverage, right? So imagine a child, and this happens more often than you see in the news, is lost in the woods, jungles, wherever. No, they know you're lost, a hiker back, whatever. You can put something in the sky, go that way very easily. So we are looking at many, many different applications for that particular technology.
That's one of the best amazing use case I've heard so far about drones.
Uh-oh,
The fact that you can help people, just amazing.
got cut off.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
It says you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you know.
My apologies. Uh,
No,
you there's a lot of use cases in drones, but the fact that you're trying to expand more on the humanitarian side, it's amazing.
thank you.
And why did UVify try to focus on the content delivery system instead of other wide use cases for drones such as agriculture and delivery?
Right. So since our founding, we if you look at like the history of, and this is I would say the recent history, not going back to the Kettering bug or things from like 80 years ago, but recent history of drones, right? So I'd say about 10 years ago, yeah, 10 years ago, there were many companies doing the kind of camera drones, right? And most of those companies were wiped out by a very big uh, Chinese company that's backed by the Chinese government. They just couldn't compete with the scale and having that type of government backing. Now we took a bit of a different approach, and so we launched the world's first FPV, digital or modular FPV with a smart battery. And while the drone racing business didn't pan out to be an esport because it's quite difficult, what we did learn is how to mass produce. We got on the radar. People recognized us for our ability to develop a great product and to market it. And then, of course, there FPV is a um, new type of camera. You're seeing it being used in filmmaking and YouTube videos and many other places. And so we developed two different products between Draco and the Ori, which I happen to have on here. This little micro. Oops, this little guy. And yeah, so we didn't go after the same thing that everyone else is going after, because if everyone's doing the same thing and you're doing the same thing, then you're doing something wrong. So so we try to look for places where that no one's thought about, and then develop technologies to either create or disrupt those markets or to create a new market. So if everyone's chasing agricultural drugs, and let me let me let me speak clear, agricultural use case is very important, but we see it a little differently than the guy with the goggles and lawn drawing. When I think about agriculture, I think about how can we use swarm technology to do it more efficiently, because the future in my view, is Swarm because we can do it cheaper, better, faster. And what we're very, very strong at, I guess our two pillars are our swarm technology and our autonomy technology. So when you put those two together, you can just imagine the kind of things that we're thinking about that we are developing uh, right now.
Imagine the future where you see that this side of mountain is kind of looking bald, and you just use your swarm technology to go plant there, and it just plants over the whole mountain. It's an
Correct.
amazing feature.
Right. I mean, think about something like search and rescue, right?
Yeah.
So right now we still use aircraft. We still use like a helicopter, or fixed wing aircraft with a pilot. And that's very expensive and not necessarily the most efficient way. Or now, we see people, with and more recently with a drone, right? So again, you have a single human with a drone or a few drones. Why would we do that when we can use swarm technology, low cost, fast, light, and agile? We can deploy hundreds or thousands like that, and every square inch of that land is mapped out very quickly. You can imagine the cost savings and the efficiency improvement through these swarm technologies.
As you said, your platform is currently the most used platform out there. Can you tell us why your platform is the most used and what makes it better than the other ones?
I think precision, I think it's because it's the most precise. I think it's also because it's the most powerful. And I think it's because it's proven it is a workhorse. So companies depend on it, brands depend on it because it delivers. If you have a platform and it doesn't work 99.9% of the time, or let's say 99% of the time, well, that's not really a reliable technology. That's not really a reliable tool. You could think if you're a carpenter and if you have a hammer and you're hired to do a job and that hammer breaks half the time, well, you're going to get a different hammer. Our hammer is used to build the greatest productions in the world every day, several times a day, consistently. People see that, operators see that, and so they know they can depend on our platform, on the EFO. They can depend on UVify to deliver the results.
I think you mentioned that you also control the manufacturing of your drones.
Correct.
Do you think the fact that you also control the manufacturing of your drones make it so that you have an unbeatable, uh, how do you say this, advantage against your competitors who might be, just a simple company who does not control their manufacturing?
I think that gives us a huge advantage, and also because we understand quality control and mass production. So some of these companies, they come in and maybe they're buying and they're literally buying components as orders come in, right? Where we mass produce. So we've got factories just cranking these things off the line. So obviously we have advantages of scale. So when we talk to suppliers and when in our supply chain, it's a different conversation than if you're a company that's like buying 100 of that module or whatever it is, a month, then when we talk to them, like, okay, we need 10,000, something like this. So yeah, that makes a big difference as well.
And I think one of the biggest advantage that we also have is I think you have the best team out there.
Thank you. I do
I mean,
too.
just the way you mentioned them, it's amazing. And what's your vision for UVify?
Hmm. Well, I think we want to make it clear to be the market leader in autonomous swarm technology, to lead the disruption of many industries, to lead the creation of new industries, of new use cases, utilizing swarm and autonomous technologies, new industries that we've yet to see that will come to fruition in the next couple of years, and also the improvement of industries that and that will happen over the next couple of years. So I'll give you another example, Jean Paul. It would be something like using a drone to map building, right? To use like a LiDAR, you're building a 3D model of that building. Well, currently, you have an operator, a skilled drone pilot, and that skilled drone pilot, is flying and it takes days. Oh, if you take 150,000, you can map the building almost instantaneously. So this is which is tremendous cost savings, obviously. And so this is where we see, where UVify will be in the next couple of years.
That's amazing. And do you have any advice on anyone who might want to enter the drone industry?
Don't compete with us.
It's not the ego talking, it's just genuinely you have the best control of the market. So I think that's a genuine great statement.
I think so. I think so. One central drone market. We're hiring. Sorry, that's um. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. I would
Yeah,
say that. And sorry, it's cliche, but it's yeah. I would say do something that's different. Find your niche, and yeah, not everybody. And the thing is, Sean Holt, the prevailing, I don't know, the zeitgeist would say everyone is an entrepreneur, and
yeah,
I think it's one of the things I like. Watching Shark Tank or like Mark Cuban, like now you're one entrepreneur, and this every industry is just rife with these types, right?
yeah,
And there's nothing wrong with joining a great company, not at all, or being an entrepreneur within
yeah,
a larger company. Nothing wrong with that at all. Or you know, being a proprietor, like running a business. Like, okay, I want to run the best bakery in the world, not necessarily putting that label of entrepreneur to it. So I think that's very important that people find their passion and they run with it. Don't let society or the
yeah.
market take to you what you should be doing, rather where your heart is, where your passion is. I think that's most important.
No, I think it goes to the part where the entrepreneur wants to have a say, or I don't think have a say, be a bigger part of the company. But I don't think some of them are willing to actually work their ass off to the point that they actually have a say on the company. That's why they just try to create things.
That's correct. That's correct. And a big part of being where we are is our team is relentless. They
Yeah,
work like they're machines. They just work like they're just so driven, and I'm grateful to be part of that.
yeah,
So feel everyone on the team is just really, really driven, and there's a direct correlation by the number of hours you'll put into something and
yeah.
the success you'll achieve.
By the way, you mentioned that you have 10 records so far. Can you let us know what those are?
So we have UVify itself has one, but
Yeah,
with our partners using our platform. So I think largest theme character, largest sentence in the sky, many, many. So I can't recall all of them, but yeah, it's I think it's around 10 now.
but most of it revolves to the fact that they are the largest drone thing in the sky.
Correct.
Yeah,
Except the one that we set, which and the way the Guinness World Records works is we could have actually claimed a few more world records when we did the largest swarm on
yeah,
multi-road. We just were so busy with stuff, and then after the fact, one of our partners mentioned to us, you could have claim this, this, and this. Okay, we'll keep that in mind next time. So we claimed several world records, and we actually, I think we produced a Christmas show, yeah, last year. We actually in our video, it says we produced the largest, I think it's Christmas gift, um, world's largest, but we didn't claim the world record because one of our partner companies had just set a world record, Guinness World Record, a week before we produced that. And we do, as I mentioned earlier, John Paul, we don't compete with our business partners. And so, yeah, it is the largest. We just didn't call Guinness World Records.
Even if the fact that you forgot to claim that particular largest thing in the world, y- I don't think anybody soon or any other company will be able to come close to that. So I don't think you have to worry there.
We um we don't rest on our laurels, but thank
Yeah.
you. And that's why I mentioned in our chat before the interview. Yeah, we're already driving to set some new records because it's a very competitive space, and we know that others are they're going to try. And but
Yeah.
so I think it goes back to I think what we're talking about with why didn't we just chase agriculture? There's this kind of theory of zigging. So if everyone's zigging, but you want to zag,
Yeah.
everyone's going that way. And like, okay, we're going that way. And so people, as long as we stay on the offensive, which we do,
Yeah.
and then that's the whole thing. We're already working on the next big thing. Everyone's chasing after us, but we're already over here.
Well,
Um,
at the end, because you have the best drones in the industry and you have, I think, one of the biggest resources, you can easily conquer any industry that you try and enter your drones into. So I don't think you have to worry there. But yeah, I like the fact that you still work hard, genuinely.
well, it's, I think, was it Gordon Warren, one of the Intel CEOs, wasn't Gordon Moore, but he said the book is titled "Only the Paranoid Survive." That's well spoken.
You gotta be, because there's gonna be a lot more people who's gonna be hungrier than you if you're not.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And since we're nearing the end of the podcast, do you have any advice on life generally?
On life, there are more important things than I think than business. I think friends, family, your passion, and hopefully your passion is aligned with your business or your work. Or and I think it's important to be mindful of those things that are important, and especially of time. Um, that your time is limited, and the time that you have with friends, family, other loved ones, pets, whatever, a tree is limited, and that's probably the most important thing to keep in mind, to be mindful of in this existence that we call life.
By the way, what's your take on work-life balance?
Oh, I think that's a myth.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there are employees, so work-life balance is very important. Um, for others, yeah, I mean, I don't. I think that's a myth for people that are building companies, and that's the trade-off we make. I think that's the deal we make. Um, if you want if you want to build something, then it's economics. There is a cost. Um, so where you can fit in, just utilize your time to make sure people you care about, the things you care about, know that you care about them. I think that, and then you do take care of yourself. Spend time, whether it's meditating or reflecting if you're religious, spending time in the commuting or um, going for walks. There are things where that will recharge you and that are, I think, are very, very important. Reading a good book, maybe not getting sucked into too much Netflix or something like this.
But I'm guilty on that part.
Yeah,
Just
you are.
watching series over series. But I think one of the good way about working from home is you can watch your series while working.
Very true, John Paul.
Yeah. And lastly, how can interested people or individuals, businesses get in touch with UVify and where can they find you?
Right. So UVify is www.uvify.com. That's UVIFY.com. You can find me on the website or LinkedIn or some social media. I have also my own site. It's my own little blog. It's Rob, ROBB, the robotguy.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn under Robert Sheik or Rob the Robot Guy. I think it might be there or other social. And if you have any questions, I'm always happy to chat. Just reach out to me on any of those channels.
you know, I'm gonna have all of that here, but I'm excited about your upcoming website just because of how great your drones are. I know you're not gonna spare no expense and not gonna wait until or not gonna try and just do an okay website. I know you're gonna do a great one, so I'm gonna be waiting for that.
Me too.
And again, thank you for joining us on the New World podcast.
Thank you, John. Well, it was a real pleasure speaking with you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be on your podcast, and I'm looking forward to seeing the production once it's finished.
That's all for today's episode of the New World Podcast. We have explored some fascinating topics with our amazing guests, shedding light on the upcoming new world. If you enjoyed today's episode and today's discussion and want to stay updated the future episodes, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to the podcast. And if you found value on what we have discussed, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you are interested in being a guest in the future, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or email me at john.paul@aicinix.com and add New World Podcast, all capital, in the subject line so I can see it. I always love hearing from our listeners. And don't forget to check out our amazing guests. You can find more information about them by the contact details we provided earlier. Again, thank you for tuning in on the New World Podcast. I know your time is very important and I try to always make the next episode better than the last. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep innovating. This is John Paul Flores signing off from the New World Podcast.